Welcome to the NEREJ NYREJ Podcast. I'm your host, Rick Kaplan. I got a special show because I have two guests today, not my normal one. And we have two attorneys from Ruberto, Israel, and Weiner. And the first one is Adam Barnosky. He's the chair of RIW's Restaurant and Hospitality Practice Group and handles alcohol, beverage licensing, commercial real estate, and corporate transaction for the retail, restaurant, and hospitality industries. And next we have Chris Agostino, is a shareholder in this and serves as business counsel to clients across the range of industries, including commercial real estate, construction, lending, manufacturing, hospitality, retail sales and services, and transportation, including carriers and brokerage. Good morning to both of you.
Morning, Rich. Thanks for having us.
Good morning, Rick.
Good morning. Tell me a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today. We'll start with Chris. And make it, I don't want it from first grade to, today.
Right.
Today. Make it a quick journey.
Sure. Thanks, Rick. Good to be with you. So 2025 is actually going to be my 20th year in practice, so a little bit of an anniversary this year. And I started out at a smaller firm, working for an attorney that was something of a generalist, a jack of all trades that represented small businesses, closely held businesses, with a focus on tax and real estate. And coming up under an attorney like that, I had an exposure to a lot of different areas of the law. Which was a good place to train starting out because you could get a sense of what you like to do and what you don't like to do. But in that practice, my practice kind of evolved into serving as outside general counsel to small businesses, closely held businesses, startups. And then because I had a background in construction and real estate, the majority of my practice, certainly not entirely, but the majority of my practice is anything that touches real estate, whether it be transactional, leasing, development, construction. The majority of my client base have a background in those areas. But as a generalist, I still maintain a practice representing small businesses in other industries as well. So as outside general counsel, it's exciting in that I don't know what I might be getting into in any particular day, but we wake up in the morning doing our best to solve our clients' problems. And 20 years later, I'm still enjoying the practice, and I've been partnered with Adam for quite some time now, and we have a good commercial real estate practice group here at RIW, and it's been a good run.
Great. Adam, how about you?
Sure. Thanks. Nice to see you again, Rick.
Nice to see you.
So as you mentioned, I'm chair of the hospitality practice group here at RIW. RIW it's a full service business law firm. We have about 30 lawyers, about 50 people on staff in total. As you mentioned, my practice is mostly in commercial real estate development, alcohol licensing, commercial leasing, mostly with a focus on the hospitality, hotel, restaurant, retail sectors. So I've been with the firm about 9 years. I've been practicing for 15. Most of my clients at this point are, various companies within the hospitality industry, a lot of hotels, a lot of restaurants, food halls, retailers, some sports and entertainment venues. And, I joined RIW in part because I knew it well and I knew of the firm. And at the time that I joined, the hospitality practice group had been pretty robust in Boston, New England for maybe 30 years at that point. A guy named Luke Katz had started it back in the late 80s. And I was working at the time for a boutique firm in Brookline. After clerking for a federal judge in law school, I found my way into private practice, first as an associate, working for this firm. We did a lot of zoning work, a lot of regulatory work, and we had a handful of restaurant clients, particularly in Brookline, Boston, Cambridge, Newton, Somerville, and then later across the state. And I got involved in alcoholic beverage licensing, which is normally one of the first steps a restaurant or hotel will take in development, and that found its way into other facets of representing those companies, but also numerous parts of the industry. And when a spot opened up here, I just knew that it would be a good fit, considering the breadth and the scope of RIW's practice, and that there was different complementary practices that worked well within what I was doing. So that's kind of a little bit of the background and what landed me here today with you.
Well, you both sound like you have enough experience. Well, and you both work as partners in some of the transactions you do. So, well, that makes for double. Someone gets their money's worth. I guess. I don't know how it works, but
Yeah, for sure.
yes.
No, that's certainly the benefit of practicing as a group. As I mentioned, I started in more of a generalist setting, but to be able to come to a larger firm allowed me to kind of focus into one area more than others, and not have to be a jack of all trades at any given moment. So it's definitely one of the benefits that we have to practicing as a group here at RIW.
Well, that's great. Let's talk about one of the things that Ruberto Israel and Weiner focuses on, but they practice in is the hospitality and the hotel industry. So with the hotel and hospitalities, you probably run into a lot of acquisitions. I know a lot of these hotel guys, they will buy and sell hotels frequently. I don't know if it's like a 1031 exchange type program or whatever they do, but I know a lot of them buy and sell. So that probably keeps you busy with that. So is that one of the things that you see in the industry as well? A lot of transactions?
Yeah, yeah, it's been a popular asset class recently. I mean, obviously, we represent real estate developers, investors in all different asset classes. But obviously, during COVID, hotels were problematic in many ways. But subsequent to that, with the glut in office space and we're seeing a lot of activity in the lab space and commercial industrial property storage was very hot there for a while, and hotels have really come into favor as an asset class after the pandemic, as people are out traveling again and paying top dollar for a quality room and a comfortable stay. So that's certainly been an area that's active, and I think our practice is kind of well suited to work with clients that are investing and looking to acquire properties in the hotel space, because we have a good crossover between the business side of acquisitions and the real estate permitting, licensing, and obviously the hospitality sector with the retail food and hospitality group. So hotels are really that intersection between real estate that is really an operating business at a location, in addition to just buying the underlying physical real estate assets. So it's been interesting as of late.
So when you have someone's selling or buying a property, actually even building ground up, so there's quite a bit of due diligence that goes into the process of selling or buying, because you're not only buying the property, like you were just saying, Chris, you have the liquor and food and beverage license that goes along with it. It's a hotel. You have rooms that have to accommodate people staying there. So tell me a little about that process. What do you have to go through to put the whole deal together?
Yeah, so it's something of a combination. So, let Adam speak to some of the licensing diligence, and I can maybe fill in some of the other areas that we look at as we're putting a team together to look at an acquisition.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, from the licensing standpoint, I mean, just going back to what Chris mentioned a moment ago. I mean, one thing we have seen, uh, you know, before COVID was the popularity and expansion of Boston. I mean, Seaport's one example, but there's a lot of different areas in Boston that have really grown significantly over the past 15 years. And as business comes to Boston, biotech, there's a lot of ancillary activity, particularly with hotels, restaurants, et cetera. So we see a lot of movement, which I think has, increased the just the activity overall in the sector. Liquor licensing is a nuanced beast. I think that, you can go from state to state to state, and no matter where you go, you're going to have some sort of some unique issues either to the state or to the municipality. We're primarily focused in New England, and a lot of the work we do is in Massachusetts and particularly in Boston. So, one of the things we always look at is in diligence is licensure. I mean, if you're acquiring a hotel, there's often going to be a license on site. So part of it is reviewing what that license looks like, what sort of management agreements are in place, whether the license is for all of the hotel, and kind of how that works. Sometimes most licenses in hotels are known as on-premise licenses, is for consumption on site. You do sometimes have quick service hotels where you'll have malt and wine beverages to go at a kiosk, and that's kind of is something we don't see as often in Boston. But the structure is really important of licensing as you look into it, and we can talk a little bit more about how hotels will structure their licensing kind of maybe after the diligence piece. But the first part of diligence is always to review what licenses are in place, how much of the hotel is under a license, whether you have standalone restaurants that are ancillary to the hotel business, and how the interplay between those businesses work.
Yeah.
You want to say something, Chris?
Sure. No, it's just and beyond the liquor licensing, obviously the underlying entitlements that allowed for the construction of the hotel from the get-go. You want to make sure that obviously the permits allow for the way the hotel is currently being operated. For instance, if the original permit provided for 40 rooms and the asset is being marketed as a 50 key hotel, you're going to want to make sure that you dig back in and look to see what the underlying permits allowed for, together with any other concessions or operating restrictions that might have been part of the original permit grant, whether it be parking considerations, neighbor agreements, access to conference rooms as a community benefit. There's usually a stack of paperwork that comes with it. And, we make sure we put together the team to address every last bit of that paperwork to make sure that the current operations reflect what was originally permitted. And, some of these properties that have been operated for an extended period of time, sometimes the operations evolve over time. And you want to make sure that the original permits still address the way things are currently operated. So it is certainly a different diligence regimen than you'd ordinarily apply to other asset classes. It makes it more interesting from our perspective. And it definitely requires a team approach where, Adam and his team have expertise in the area of liquor licensing and some of the operating permits that you see for hotels, and then we dovetail that with the rest of the commercial real estate group. So it definitely requires bringing a lot of expertise to bear.
Now, I knew, well, I don't know if it's how new it is, but there's a lot of hotels that have the long-term stay set up where they have a kitchenette in every room. So it's almost like an apartment, somewhat, with like a short stay. Uh, is that something that's almost like getting licensing and permitting for a hotel, for an apartment building, I would think, right?
Right. Well, and I mean, I'll give you the very lawyerly, it depends, Rick. I mean, the issue is that oftentimes the zoning code was written at a time or amended during a time in which these kind of long-term stays might not be applicable. So yeah, oftentimes you end up trying to find the fit within the use table that most matches what you're doing. And so certainly there's the what you're talking about most of the time ends up being permitted like a traditional hotel, or in some cases a lodging house or a B&B or something within that, as opposed to a residential stay. But from the permitting aspect, a mixed use within a hotel itself is very often seen, particularly in Boston, where you'll have retailers and restaurants, and then on other levels you'll have hotels, and then you'll have residences in a condominium up top. So very rarely just one portion of the use code that you see in there when you're permitting.
So almost
Yeah.
every hotel transaction is a little different because they have a little different spin to their theme. Let's call it a theme, where they have that long-term stay. They have, like you were saying, Adam, they have a bunch of retail at the lower level of the restaurant or the hotel. They have a function hall or something of that nature. Uh, so, I mean, there's so many things that you have to be so versed in, because it's not just straightforward, just a hotel. So, when you say you have a team, is it that, and that's where Chris, you were handling some of the I guess uh, the real estate transaction part of it and the construction, right?
Yeah. It's always helpful to be able to walk down the hall and consult with if there's a tax issue associated with an acquisition, certain structure with investors that might be putting together a syndicated transaction. Yeah, it definitely it has a heightened level of complexity dealing with hotel acquisitions. And I think, to Adam's point, there are 351 different cities and towns in Massachusetts, and depending on where the asset is, every town has its local customs, and you may have to consult with the local attorney that knows the ins and outs of a particular zoning board if there's some concession that needs to be made in a particular deal where the operating permits require some specific use to be assigned. So it definitely requires additional effort relative to some of the other, as I said, asset classes that we usually deal with.
Now, uh, I'm not a hotel expert by any means, but so I know a few guys in the industry, and they have a bunch of hotels, and they don't manage them themselves. They have outside management come in that manage the hotel, which I don't know, that could be a scary thing as well as maybe make life a little easier. I'm not sure. Uh, but when these guys come in, I'm sure there's some kind of agreement that you have to put together between the owner of the hotel and the management company that is probably going to take care of the house cleaning, the food and beverage. Yeah. Now, who handles the licensing? The owner who would probably carry it with them. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I would say that most hotels that you stay at or you see are under management agreements with a third party operator that comes in and manages, as you mentioned, the food and beverage, the just the day-to-day functioning of the hotel. From a licensing standpoint, it's normally done one of three ways. I mean, either with smaller hotels with lower key numbers, you'll see the hotel as the owner operator, jack of all trades. They will be the licensee, they will be the operator, and they'll run everything internally. Most oftentimes you see food and beverage operated through a management company or through independent operators or a combination of it, which is most often the case. Usually it is the hotel that is licensed. And it's normally in all of said building is normally the description of the license, where you have the entirety of the building, all the rooms, everything is licensed. And then the management company will often operate a series of restaurants within the hotel, if it's a larger hotel or if it's a hotel where you see a lot of business activity and conferences and things of that sort. So from a public facing perspective, it may seem as though you're walking into a hotel that has 4 different restaurants with 4 different themes and 4 different types of food, but it's all operated by one management company, and the flow of funds would really go from the hotel licensee down to pay a management fee to the management company. But you also see a situation sometimes where hotels will see a advantage or a benefit into having a standalone operator. It's either a celebrity chef that's local or national, and they want to bring in the individual to run something special within the hotel. And sometimes the management situation, that sort of arrangement might not work as well. So it'll almost be as though you have a separately licensed, separate operating business within the hotel. And that can come with advantages and disadvantages. Certainly, the restaurant can operate more on its own, but there's financial considerations where you have to have an additional license. There has to be some concern over the crossover of food and beverage between 2 licenses and a bunch of nuanced things we don't have to get into today. But there's a lot of different arrangements, but certainly the management agreement is the most typical one. And I think that for some of the folks that Chris works with where you have people that are coming in and they're seeing it as an asset class, those folks might be focused on one thing, but the particularities of food and beverage might not be that. So best to give that to a company who understands some of the particularities there.
So one of the things that comes to my head about when you have a management company working and you have restaurants and you have different revenue streams coming in, how is the revenue split up? Is it split up?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it all depends on obviously the terms of the management agreement. But I think Rick, you kind of hit the nail on the head in that's the underlying operating business that when you're looking at acquiring a hotel, you have to investigate exactly what the business deal is and what the terms of the management agreement provide for. And some operators might want to come in and have an entirely new management agreement negotiated that provides for things like altering the splits between the underlying real estate and the operating business, and then how profits are allocated between the two. So all of that goes into kind of formulating the approach because the sky's the limit as far as what's negotiated. And then, as Adam described, it's not just in all cases the hotel operations. You might have either a standalone restaurant space, or as he described, the restaurant may be incorporated into the overall larger premises of the hotel. And from a acquisition or sales standpoint, the health of that business is important. So there's an added layer of financial due diligence and financial review and digging into the terms of the management agreement and whether it's terminable, whether it's something you can renegotiate as part of the transaction, or whether the asset is encumbered by the management agreement for some extended duration. All of that is going to be part of the evaluation of the transaction, and ultimately will define the value that someone's willing to pay for the property. I mean, if you have a management agreement that's entirely one-sided to the management company, there's little value in the real estate where the management company is walking away with all the profit and benefit over the long term. So It's certainly something that requires a close read.
So the management company, in a lot of cases, it doesn't seem like it's always in place. It's usually the owner is the operator and the manager of the facility. I am mostly in the high-end hotels, I would think. Like you're not going to get that management company that in like a Four Seasons hotel because they have a reputation of being this high-end and top chefs and things of that nature. It's not going to be the same as a Hampton Inn. The management company on a Hampton Inn is not going to be the same management company in the Four Seasons. I'm imagining that's the case.
Generally, yes. Yeah, there's certainly various strata of management companies that are out there, and you'd be surprised by the number and variety of third party managers that handle these. They're certainly not all owner operated. There are definitely third parties that come in and handle the day to day from soup to nuts, and the underlying owner of the real estate has insight and obviously knows what's going on as far as the bottom line. But when it comes to making sure the lights get turned on in the morning, it's whatever management company you're comfortable with or what's appropriate for, as you pointed out, whether it's the a Four Seasons brand, Marriott, Hilton brand, or whatever other brands are out there, and then what the management company is actually contracted to do relative to the type of level of service that you're looking to provide.
Now, that's great information. I'm not planning on buying a hotel very soon, but you touched on something, Chris, on lending. And I know the lending in the hotel, because I know there's a lot of guys that do something with the debt for their financing of their hotels or refinancing. I'm not sure how that all works, but maybe you have an idea because you're probably doing some of these transactions where they do a refi for a debt refi.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of money out there chasing deals, and there are lenders that are active in the hotel space. That was obviously a space that wasn't necessarily something that lenders were interested in for a while, but I think they're certainly tiptoeing back into it. And any deal varies where the capital stack is made up of traditional debt, investor equity, uh, and anything in between. And I think from the perspective of lenders and operators, making sure that all the pieces that make up a hotel are accounted for in that lending transaction. I mean, Adam can speak to some of the licensing that goes into allowing the hotel to operate. But if you're a lender and you're lending on a hotel deal, you want to make sure that you have a perfected security interest in all aspects of the hotel operation. That if you take over, you're not missing something that might prevent you from operating the hotel if the owner has any issues. But the sky's the limit as far as what these deals look like and what the ultimate capital stack looks like for acquisition, refinancing, or anything else. But there are lenders that are interested in those types of deals right now.
Yeah, and I think, Chris, if I can just add to that, what we're seeing more, what I've been seeing a lot more with, not only from the banking department that we have here, but also, as part of being lenders counsel is an interest from the lenders to obtain a security interest in the license as part of their security bundle. And that's become more popular in recent years, where I think oftentimes in maybe 10, 15 years ago, that was either It was either something that let's do it post closing and it wasn't done, or it wasn't as purposefully looked at during the lending process. And it plays a huge role. I mean, number one is that, in any municipality where there's value to a license, that becomes important just for the sake of the value of the license itself. But most of the cases where there's no inherent value in a license, it is important for operational purposes in order for a lender to acquire the business in the event of a foreclosure or a workout, because licensing can get very, very tricky if you have parties that are not where there's no security interests, or you have parties that might not be willingly helping one another out to work out a transfer. And state and local licensing authorities their hands are tied with double licensure. You can't license one space twice. Licenses have to be removed and revoked, and there's all these rights that have to go with it. So we're definitely seeing more of the pledge aspect as being part of the deal, really, and that requires local approval, state approval, and UCC. There's all of these different things that need to be done to ensure that that's perfected. So that's one thing we're seeing more often.
Well, I have one last question, because I know you guys probably have work that you have to do. I see Chris was looking. There's probably someone that has to get into his office to make a cup of espresso. So we want to get through the show. We don't want everyone losing their shakes for the rest of the day. So if there's an area in the state or somewhere in the country where they have a shortage of hotels, and when you're going to an area like that and a hotel developer is interested, is it much easier for him to go into an area like that with the government in that area knowing that they need these hotels? Is it easier to get all these permitting and licensing in that type of an area? Do they make some concessions for you?
Ooh, I mean, it always depends on the direct abutter. I don't know, Adam, what are your thoughts?
Where there's a will, there's a way. I mean, I think it really just depends on the sort of economic development that's happening within the municipality, how permissive their zoning is, and really what the desires and wants of the community is to see it done. You'll see where certain communities have large entertainment facilities that have been permitted. There'll be some sort of ancillary permitting that by right is allowed to come in, or with certain sorts of overlay approvals might be seen as coming in. But it really just depends. I mean, normally if there's a dearth of hotels, then the dearth is there for a reason, and the demand is there for a reason, and economic factors will somehow find a way to make it happen.
Okay. That makes it almost interesting for someone to develop in an area like that. It could be easier, I guess. And at the bottom, it all depends. All right. Well, I want to thank you guys for coming on the show. Very interesting topic. And like you were saying, now things are starting to get back into the swing with the hotels, because, during COVID, things kind of changed the business a little. But and from the people I know in the industry, they're starting to get a little more interest in growing again. So that's good for you guys.
Absolutely. And thanks for having us, Rick. We appreciate it.
Thank you. We're talking with Adam Barnosky and Chris Agostino of Ruberto, Israel, and Weiner. And I want to thank you guys for coming on. I'm Rick Kaplan from the New England Real Estate Journal, and you've been listening to the NYREJ podcast. Until next time.